The alarm bells rang across New Terra Colony like the screams of dying stars. Captain Mike Rodriguez rushed through the corridors of the command center, his boots echoing against metal floors still warm from the recent attack. A scent of burned circuits and fear hung heavy in the recycled air. "Report!" He barked at Lieutenant Amy Walsh, who stood frozen before a wall of flickering screens. "They took them all, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the emergency klaxons. "Every child under 16. Gone." Rodriguez felt his world collapse. The alien ships had appeared without warning, sleek black vessels that seemed to drink in the light of New Terra's twin suns. They had descended like vultures, their weapons precise and terrible, but they had not come to destroy the colony. They had come to harvest. The security footage told the story in painful detail. Strange beings in flowing robes had walked through the settlement's defenses as if they were made of paper. Their faces were hidden behind masks of polished bone, and their movements carried an otherworldly grace that made human eyes water to watch. They had taken the children with surgical precision, ignoring the adults who threw themselves at the barriers of shimmering energy that surrounded each raiding party. "How many?" Rodriguez asked, though he dreaded the answer. 237 children, Walsh replied, her hands shaking as she read from her tablet. "From infants to teenagers. They left behind anyone over 16. Rodriguez stared at the empty playground visible through the command center's windows. Swing sets moved gently in the artificial breeze, their chains creaking like funeral songs. Toys lay scattered on the ground where they had fallen from small hands that would never pick them up again. The aliens had taken more than children. They had stolen humanity's future, its hope, its reason for existing among the stars. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," Walsh announced. Admiral Kate Johnson's weathered face appeared on the main screen, her eyes hard as space-forged steel. Behind her, Rodriguez could see the massive war room that coordinated humanity's expansion into the galaxy. "Captain Rodriguez, we've received similar reports from 12 other colonies," the Admiral said, her voice cutting through the static. "These creatures have taken our children from across human space. We estimate over 3,000 missing." Rodriguez felt the blood drain from his face. 3,000 children. An entire generation of humanity's youngest, stolen by beings whose motives remained as dark as the void between stars. "Admiral, what are your orders?" he managed to ask. Johnson's expression grew even harder, if such a thing was possible. "We're mobilizing the entire colonial defense fleet. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. These aliens think they can take our children and disappear into the darkness." She leaned forward, and Rodriguez could see the fury burning in her eyes like the heart of a dying sun. "They're about to learn what happens when you threaten a human's child. We're going to find them. We're going to get our children back. And then we're going to make sure these creatures never threaten another human world again." The transmission ended, leaving Rodriguez alone with the weight of what was coming. Across the galaxy, humanity was awakening to a new kind of war. Not a war for territory or resources, but a war for the most precious thing any species could possess: its future. Outside the command center, parents wept in the empty streets of New Terra Colony. But their tears would not last long. Soon, those tears would become something far more dangerous. They would become the fuel for humanity's terrible vengeance. Asterisk. 3 weeks had passed since the raids began, and the colonial defense fleet had transformed into something humanity had never seen before. Ships that once carried supplies and peaceful settlers now bristled with weapons pulled from military stockpiles. Merchant vessels had been converted into troop carriers. Even civilian craft volunteered to join the growing armada. Commander Jack Stone stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, watching the fleet assemble in the darkness around Earth's moon. 200 ships of every size and class, united by a single purpose: find the creatures who had stolen their children. "Commander, we've got something," called tech specialist Lisa Park from her station. Her fingers danced across holographic displays showing data streams from across human space. Long-range sensors picked up energy signatures matching the alien ships. "They're heading toward the outer rim." Stone moved to her station, his jaw tight with controlled anger. Every human in the fleet carried that same rage, burning cold and patient like the space between stars. It was a fury that would not be satisfied until their children came home. "Show me," he commanded. The main view screen filled with a star map showing the alien trail. Red dots marked each colony that had been hit, creating a pattern that led deeper into unexplored space. The path was clear now, pointing toward a region that human sensors had never fully mapped. "Sir, we're also receiving intelligence from the other species in the Galactic Council," Park continued, pulling up new data. "The bird-like Altans have records of similar raids on their world centuries ago. They call the attackers the Void Reapers." Stone felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air of the ship. "What else do the Altans know?" "Not much, sir. They say the Reapers are ancient, older than most spacefaring civilizations. They appear every few hundred years, take children from younger races, then vanish again." Park's voice grew smaller. "The Altans lost an entire generation 300 years ago. They never got them back." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Stone looked out at the assembled fleet, thinking of all the parents aboard those vessels. Parents who had volunteered for a mission that might cost them their lives. Parents who would rather die fighting than live knowing their children were lost forever. "Well, the Altans aren't humans," Stone said finally, his voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. "And these Void Reapers are about to learn the difference." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. We follow that trail wherever it leads. No matter how far, no matter how dangerous, we bring our children home." As the Retribution and her sister ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, Stone thought about his own daughter, 8-year-old Emma, who had been taken from the Mars colony. Her laugh, her questions about the stars, her bedtime stories about brave space explorers. The Void Reapers had made their greatest mistake when they had chosen humanity as prey. They had awakened something that had driven humans to conquer their own hostile world, to reach for the stars, and to never surrender in the face of impossible odds. They had awakened humanity's protective fury dot, and now that fury was coming for them across the vast darkness, carried by ships filled with parents who would burn the galaxy to ash before they let their children disappear forever. The hunt had begun. The Void Reaper outpost hung in the shadow of a dead moon, its black hole drinking in the light from a distant red star. It looked like a massive spider made of metal and darkness, its long arms reaching out into space like the legs of some cosmic predator. Commander Stone watched the alien structure through the view screen of the Retribution, his hands gripping the rail so hard his knuckles had turned white. After 2 months of following energy trails and sensor ghosts across the galaxy, they had finally found their enemy. "Sir, we're detecting life signs aboard the station," reported Lieutenant Tom Garcia from the sensor station. Human life signs. Children. A wave of emotion swept through the bridge crew. Parents who had volunteered for this mission felt their hearts skip beats. Officers who had maintained military discipline for weeks suddenly found their hands shaking. "How many?" Stone asked, his voice barely steady. 47 confirmed human signatures, sir. All showing vital signs consistent with children between ages 4 and 15. Stone closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of Emma somewhere in that dark place. When he opened them again, the fury in his gaze could have melted steel. Battle stations. All ships, prepare for assault. We go in hard and fast. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves scenting prey. 12 heavy cruisers led. The charge, their missile batteries already armed and targeting the station's defense systems. Behind them came the smaller ships, converted freighters filled with Marines and rescue teams. The Void Reapers responded immediately. Sleek fighters poured from hidden bays in the station's arms, their weapons crackling with energy that bent. Light around it. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Human pilots flew with a desperation that bordered on madness. They threw their ships into impossible maneuvers, accepting damage that would have made other species retreat. When fighter pilot Dan Miller's craft took a direct hit that destroyed his engines, he didn't eject. Instead, he aimed his crippled ship at a Reaper fighter and rammed it, taking both vessels out in a ball of fire and twisted metal. For the children. He screamed over the comm as his ship exploded. The cry was taken up by every human in the battle. For the children. Within 30 minutes, the Reaper fighters were destroyed or fleeing. The station's defenses lay in ruins. Marine transports docked with the alien structure like antibodies. Attacking a virus. Stone led the first boarding party himself, his weapon ready as they cut through the station's hull. The corridors inside were like nothing human eyes had ever seen. The walls curved and twisted in patterns that hurt to look at, covered in symbols that seemed to crawl when viewed directly. But it was what they found in the station's center that would haunt Stone's dreams forever. The children were there, alive but changed. They floated in tanks filled with glowing fluid, their young faces peaceful as machines fed them dreams of home. But those dreams were being harvested, extracted, and stored in crystalline devices that pulsed with stolen memories and emotions. Void Reapers weren't just taking children. They were feeding on their innocence, their hope, their pure human joy. They were parasites that consumed what made childhood precious. Marine Sergeant Kate Brown, herself a mother of 2 stolen children, stared at the horrible sight and felt something break inside her chest. Not her spirit that remained as strong as ever. What broke was her last connection to mercy. "Sir," she said to Stone, her voice deadly calm, "I request permission to set the station's reactor to overload." Stone looked at the children floating in their prison tanks, at the machines stealing their dreams, at the alien technology that treated human young like cattle to be harvested. "Permission granted, Sergeant. But first, we get our children out of here." As the rescue teams worked to free the captive children, Stone made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He activated his comm unit and broadcast to the entire human fleet. "This is Commander Stone to all ships. We now know what these creatures do to our children. They don't just take them, they feed on them. They steal their dreams, their joy, their very souls." His voice grew harder with each word. "I want every human in this fleet to see what we found here. I want them to understand what we're fighting. And then I want them to remember this moment when we find the Reaper homeworld." The station exploded behind them as the human fleet departed, carrying 47 rescued children back toward human space. But those children brought more than just the joy of reunion. They brought intelligence about their captors, secrets learned during their imprisonment. They brought the key to finding every stolen human child in the galaxy. And they brought confirmation of what humanity had already decided. The Void Reapers would pay for every tear, every stolen laugh, every dream they had consumed. The war had just begun, but the enemy had already lost. They simply didn't know it, yet the rescued children sat in the medical bay of the Retribution, their eyes still haunted by what they had endured. But among them, 10-year-old Ben Taylor stood up with the kind of determination that had carried humanity to the stars. "I know where they took the others," he announced to Commander Stone and the assembled officers. His small voice carried a strength that made hardened soldiers pause. I saw it in the dream machines. All of us did. Dr. Helen West, the fleet's chief psychologist, had worked with the rescued children for 3 weeks. She had helped them process the trauma of their captivity, but more importantly, she had helped them organize the memories stolen by the Reaper. Machines. The children retained fragments of what the aliens extracted from them, she explained to Stone. Shared experiences, collective memories. They have a map, Commander. A map to the Reaper homeworld. Emma Rodriguez, now 12 and Commander Stone's adopted daughter since her father died in the first battle, stepped forward. Her eyes held wisdom no child should possess, but also an unbreakable will. They call their world the Harvest Throne. She said, it's where they keep all the stolen children from every race they've ever attacked. Thousands and thousands of them, Commander. Maybe millions. The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. The Void Reapers had been operating for centuries, stealing children from dozens of species across the galaxy. Their homeworld was not just a military target, it was the largest prison in known space. The children also know something else. Dr. West continued, her voice growing excited. The Reapers have a weakness. The dream machines work both ways. When they steal memories and emotions, they also absorb them. After centuries of feeding on the joy and hope of children, their minds have become ... contaminated. Young Ben nodded eagerly. They're addicted to our dreams, sir. They need them to survive now. And human children dream differently than other species. We dream bigger, bolder. Our imagination is too strong for their machines to handle completely. Stone leaned forward, sensing opportunity. What does that mean? It means if we could overwhelm their systems with pure human emotion, joy, love, hope, we might be able to shut them down. Dr. West explained. But it would require a massive coordinated effort. Emma stepped closer to Stone, her young face set with determination. It means we need to get all the human children to fight back at the same time, from inside their prison, while you attack from outside. The audacity of the plan took Stone's breath away. They were talking about turning captured children into soldiers, asking them to fight a battle that adult minds could barely comprehend. But as he looked at the faces around him, rescued children who had endured horrors and emerged stronger, officers who had already sacrificed everything for this mission, Stone realized this was exactly the kind of impossible plan the humans specialized in. 3 months later, the largest fleet in human history assembled at the edge of Reaper space. Every colony had contributed ships. Every family had sent their champions. Over 800 vessels, from massive battleships to converted mining vessels, all united behind a single banner, bring our children home. But the real army was invisible, spread across dozens of Reaper facilities and prison worlds. 3,000 human children, organized through secret networks they had built in captivity, prepared to launch their own assault from within. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. The children would use their collective willpower to overload the dream machines from the inside, causing system-wide failures across Reaper technology. At that exact moment, the human fleet would strike with everything they had. Commander Stone, now promoted to Admiral of the combined colonial fleet, stood on the bridge of the newly constructed flagship Humanity's Fury. Around him, the largest military operation in human history prepared to begin. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, he broadcast to the fleet. Today, we don't just fight for our children. We fight for every child these creatures have ever stolen. We fight for the future of every species in the galaxy. We fight to prove that when you threaten a human's young, you face the consequences. He paused, thinking of Emma and all the other children counting on them. We fight to show these ancient predators what happens when they pick on someone their own size. All ships, jump to the Harvest Throne system. It's time to bring our children home. 800 ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying humanity's fury toward the heart of Reaper civilization. Behind them, they left empty colonies and grieving families. Ahead of them waited the final battle that would determine whether humanity's children would grow up free, or whether they would become food for cosmic parasites that had preyed on the innocent for centuries. The children's crusade had begun. The Harvest Throne system was a monument to cosmic horror. The Reaper homeworld sat at its center like a diseased heart, surrounded by dozens of moon-sized facilities where stolen children from 100 species lived in crystalline cages. The entire system pulsed with the stolen dreams of millions of young minds. Admiral Stone watched the alien stronghold through the view screen of humanity's fury and felt his resolve harden into something diamond-sharp. Somewhere in that nightmare, 3,000 human children waited for rescue. Around them, countless others from species humanity had never even met shared the same terrible fate. "Admiral, we're detecting massive Reaper fleet movement," reported Captain Lisa Park from the tactical station. "Over 2,000 ships emerging from behind the outer moons. They're forming a defensive wall around their homeworld." Stone nodded. Grimly, the Void Reapers had ruled this corner of space for millennia. They had never faced a real threat to their home system before, but they understood the danger humanity represented. "Signal all ships," Stone commanded. "Execute battle formation. Alpha, remember, our job is to keep them busy while our children do the real work." 800 human vessels spread out across the system like an infection of steel and fury. They were outnumbered 3-1, facing an enemy with technology far beyond their own. By every military calculation, they should have retreated, but they were fighting for their children. And humans with nothing left to lose were the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The battle began when the first Reaper dreadnought fired its reality-warping weapons at the human fleet. Space itself twisted and screamed as the alien beam tore through 3 human destroyers, reducing them to quantum dust. "Return fire," Stone shouted. "Everything we have." The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Missiles, plasma cannons, kinetic rounds, and experimental weapons pulled from secret military projects, all of it unleashed at once in a fury that lit up the darkness between worlds. But the real battle was happening somewhere else entirely, deep. Within the Harvest Throne's prison complexes, human children who had been taught to despair suddenly remembered who they were. Emma Stone, now 13 and hardened by captivity, stood in the center of her cell and spoke to the dream machine monitoring her thoughts. "You want to know what humans dream about?" She asked the alien technology. "Let me show you." Across dozens of facilities, 3,000 human children stopped being victims and became something the Void Reapers had never encountered before. They became human children with a mission. They dreamed of home. They dreamed of their parents' faces, of birthday, parties and Christmas mornings and summer days that lasted forever. They dreamed of puppies and ice cream and the feeling of grass beneath their bare feet. They dreamed with the pure, unlimited imagination that only children possessed, and the dream machines, designed to steal and process those emotions slowly, were suddenly flooded with more joy, hope, and love than they had been built to contain. The first facility went dark when young. Ben Taylor imagined his mother's lullaby with such perfect clarity that the alien computers couldn't process it. The emotion was too pure, too human, too impossibly bright. The second facility failed when a group of 8-year-olds dreamed together about a playground where all the stolen children could play together, free from cages and monsters. Their shared vision overloaded every dream machine in the complex. One by one, the Reaper facilities began shutting down as human children weaponized their own innocence against their captors. "Admiral, massive power fluctuations across all Reaper." "Vessels!" Captain Park shouted over the noise of battle. "Their weapons are failing. Their shields are dropping." Stone felt his heart soar as he watched the alien fleet suddenly become vulnerable. The children had done it. They had turned the Reaper's own weapon against them. All ships, target the disabled vessels, Stone ordered. Show no mercy. Remember what they did to our children. What followed was not a battle, but an execution. Human ships descended on the crippled Reaper fleet like avenging angels, their weapons cutting through alien hulls that no longer had functioning defenses. Within hours, 2,000 Reaper vessels had been reduced to drifting wreckage. The homeworld itself lay defenseless as human. Landing craft descended toward the prison facilities. Marines stormed the complexes where alien guards stumbled blindly through corridors lit by emergency power, their technology useless, their ancient empire crumbling. Stone himself led the assault on the central facility, his weapon ready as he cut through sealed doors toward the holding cells. And there, in a chamber that had held nightmares for so long, he found them. 3,000 human children, weak but alive, their eyes bright with the knowledge that they had fought back and won. Around them, the dream machines lay silent and broken, destroyed by the very innocence they had tried to steal. Emma ran into his arms, and for a moment, Stone allowed himself to be just a father holding his daughter instead of an admiral commanding. A war. We did it, Dad, she whispered. We broke their machines. We set everyone free. Stone looked around at the liberated children human Alten and dozens of other species he couldn't identify, all blinking in the light of freedom. The youngest was barely 2 years old. The oldest was 16 and had been captive for years. Yes, you did, he told Emma, his voice thick with pride and relief. You all did? The Void Reapers who survived the battle were gathered in the ruins of their homeworld, facing a tribunal of the species they had wronged. But there would be no trials, no lengthy negotiations about justice. Humanity had learned what the ancient predators did to children. There could be only one response. Within a week, every Reaper world had been found and sterilized. Every facility had been destroyed. Every member of their species had been hunted down and eliminated with the methodical precision the humans brought to protecting their young. The galaxy would remember this day not as a battle between equals, but as a lesson written in fire and starlight. Never touch our children. The rescued children returned home to celebrations that lasted for months. The stolen generations of other species were reunited with families who had given them up for dead centuries ago. And across the galaxy, younger races slept more peacefully knowing that somewhere among the stars, humanity stood watch. The Void Reapers were gone, wiped from existence as if they had never been. Their technology was destroyed, their homeworld reduced to radioactive dust, their very name forbidden in human space. Some would later argue that humanity had gone too far. That complete genocide was an extreme response. But those critics had never stood in the chambers where children's dreams were harvested like crops, had never seen the machines that fed on innocence itself. Humanity had shown the galaxy its true nature. They were not conquerors or empire builders or cosmic philosophers. They were parents, and they would burn the universe to ash before they let anyone harm their young. In the end, that was enough.